like to welcome you back to our teaching in the book of Galatians. Today we're going back to Galatians 5, and we're going to look at verse number 15. But let's go back to verse number 14 so that we can catch this all in context. In verse number 14, the Apostle Paul wrote, "For the whole law is fulfilled in one word, in the statement, love your neighbor as yourself." Now, if you didn't listen to our video from yesterday, I want to encourage you to go back to yesterday and watch that video and listen to what we shared. You see, the Apostle Paul is saying that the whole law is fulfilled in one commandment, in one statement, and that is that you love your neighbor. He didn't throw out the law. He said it's fulfilled, it's completed all the way to the top of one statement, and that is to love your neighbor as yourself. But then he goes on now in verse number 15, and he starts talking about a process. And this is what he says in verse 15. "But if you bite and devour one another, take care that you are not consumed by one another." Wow, what a powerful statement. Now notice how he starts. He said, if you bite. Now the Greek word here basically means to bite. Just to bite someone, to come to them and to attack them in a way where you're just taking a bite out of them. Now, I don't believe the Apostle Paul is talking and saying this is actually something we do physically. I believe he's talking and saying and using it metaphorically, where we come and we bite them, we speak badly of them, we yell at them, we shout at them, we criticize them, all kinds of biting things meant to take a little piece out of someone. I'm going to get a piece of you. You know, I used to, before I became a Christian, I was involved in some fights. And one of the things we would say, I'm going to get a piece of you. I'm going to get a piece of you. Well, you know what? There's believers that are looking to get a piece of someone, get a bite on someone. And you know what? The Apostle Paul says, but you bite. What's he doing? He's talking about the Galatians. He's talking about the Judaizers, and he's talking about those who are still doing idol worship and serving the flesh and living in sin. And he's saying, you guys are constantly biting, trying to take a piece out of somebody. Constantly biting. You're biting each other. And you know what? Biting is just the first step. If we don't stop, we're going to continue. And what's the next step that the Apostle Paul brings us to? He says, and you devour one another. Now, what does it mean to devour? It means to completely destroy something. If I were to take an animal and clean them and cook them and then eat the whole thing, you know what happens? That animal no longer exists. It's gone. And you see, it all starts with that little bite. I'm going to bite you. I'm going to get a piece of you. But if we don't repent, you know what happens? It comes to the place where we seek to devour. We seek to completely rid the world of that person. That person becomes our number one attraction. That sin becomes our number one attraction. And we begin with a bite, and then we move on to something that completely devours our neighbor. That's not love. That's not love. You know, if you're looking at a person of the opposite sex that's thinking, oh, I just want them. I want them physically. You know what? It's a sin. And you're not loving them. You're just wanting to control them. If you're looking at another person and you're thinking, well, you know what? I want to influence their life. I want control of their life. I want to control everything that they do. You know what? It starts with a bite. But he eventually is going to move to the place where you're going to want to control every part of that person's life. Do you understand? That's not love. That is not love. You know, we're living in a nation where they want to control everything that we do. That's not love. They're trying to make it out to be love. It's not love. That's not love. Loving your neighbor. Giving of yourself to your neighbor. Giving of yourself unconditionally to your neighbor as you would for yourself. That's love. Now, the next part of that verse. Take care that you are not consumed by one another. You know what the last step is? The last step is somebody comes and gets you. The last step is somebody comes then because of your unloving attitude towards them. They come to the point where they're going to take and they are going to completely rid you from the world. They're going to do what? They're going to consume you. And you see, all the law, going back to verse 14, all of the law is fulfilled. All the law that was given for the protection of people, for the protection of your neighbor. You know what? All of those laws that were given, they weren't given just to bind you up. Now, the Pharisees and the religious leaders brought it to a point where they were binding people up with the law. But those laws are not given to hinder you. Those laws are given to take care of you and to take care of your neighbor. Do you understand that? But if we continue to bite, if we continue to consume and take control of someone else's life, you know what? Paul takes it to that last step and he says, take care, watch out that you are not consumed by one another. You know, the way you treat someone else is going to be the way they treat you. If you love someone unconditionally, you know what? Eventually that person is going to love you unconditionally. What you sow, that is what you're going to reap. So as we bring this video to a close, I want to challenge you to sow love into someone else today. Because you know what? Instead of biting and devouring them, you know what? If you'll say, you know what? I'm going to help you. I'm going to promote you. I'm going to lift you up. I'm going to edify you. I'm going to build you in love. You know what will happen? They will turn around and love you and not consume you. I hope this has blessed you. God bless you until we speak to you again.